So Peter Gago, one of the most famous winemakers in the world, and of course the custodian of the famous Grange. What better man to ask about the Shiraz grape than you? Can you tell me what we should be looking in Great Australian Shiraz?
Well, there's such a variation on the theme, from the cool climate Shiraz styles of Australia through to the warmer climate, so a myriad of styles. But the better Shiraz wines from Australia, whether they be from either style, have a lovely depth of flavour, layers of complexity, and are wines that age, that have that propensity to sell well over many decades.
Fantastic. And tell me, if you were to try and pinpoint the classic aromas that we would expect to encounter at the early stages of the development, what would you expect?
Right. Well, this is a good example of a younger Shiraz, and we're getting lovely rich plum, and we're getting blueberries, blackberries, spice. But you know, this is all primary fruit. As the wine ages, you'll get the lovely chocolates, pralines, leathers, and the wine's ready to develop through a secondary and a tertiary phase.
Right.
But this is just at the start of the journey with a lovely primary fruit.
Right, so it's slowly, the concerto is slowly building up. To
Absolutely,
the
as it unfurls over time.
And tell me, where did the name Grange come from? We all know about Penfolds and Dr. Ross and Penfold. Where did Grange actually come from?
Well, it was the name of their cottage where they lived. And in fact, I'm from the McGill winery. Right. I have an office there and an office in our new reopened Barossa Valley winery. But at the original vineyard, you know, founded back in 1844, 167 years ago, is a lovely cottage, the Grange Cottage. So that was named after the one in England, their one there, and the wine followed.
On from there. And of course, the story behind Penfolds Grange is a wonderful story and a great tribute to Max Schubert.
Indeed.
The originator of the whole concept. And I'm actually fascinated by his whole concept of multi-district, multi-vineyard blending or whatever, which is unique because we're also obsessed by terroir in the old world.
Yes.
Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yes, well, I guess at Penfolds we make three very distinct styles of wines. Wines from single vineyards, respecting sense of place, terroir, call it what you will. So, for example, our McGill Estate Shiraz, one wine, one vineyard made there. The second style of wine we make are wines and Shiraz wines included from single viticultural areas. A good example might be our Penfolds RWT Shiraz, only from vineyards in the Barossa Valley. But this wine, Grange, is what we refer to as a multi-regional wine. We don't care where the Shiraz fruit comes from as long as it's the best we can source in Australia. So it might come from 10 vineyards, it might come from 50 vineyards, it might come from 14 vineyards. The selection is made organoleptically blind. We don't know the vineyard, we don't know the variety, we don't know the volume. We do it on what's in a glass. Bottles coded, takes all of the biases out of it, the emotional biases out of the selection and the financial biases out of the selection.
So each year the blend or that source of fruit could be changing a little bit. I'm sure it's
tweaked, it's always of that Grange style.
Right.
However, in a given vintage, sometimes the vineyards move, different soil types, different climatic conditions prevailing.
Right.
So it's really very much about the vintage. But the house style is Penfolds.
Right.
The mark is Grange.
Right.
And it's harder to make this wine than it is many of our other wines, which are made to a more sort of an easier stylistic template.
I mean, conceptually it seems incredibly difficult. It's almost like a parallel to making champagne.
Absolutely,
blending within the champagne region.
Great analogy.
Incredible, and therefore you're all the time trying to keep it relatively consistent, but then have your own expression as well, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, and the vintage variation, you know, people tend to think in Australia we don't have much vintage variation. We do, but it's not the huge roller coaster. But the great vintages are worth seeking out, and we have, you know, terrific vintages of Grange, but even the ordinary vintages, in inverted commas, are up there, we'd like to think. I say that, of course, without any bias.
Of course. And tell me, in terms of, I'm intrigued by the blending of the Cabernet Sauvignon. So typically, Grange, from my understanding, is roughly 90% Shiraz, at least.
Well, I can articulate that.
Sure.
In the last 60 years, there have only been 5 vintages of Grange that have been 100% Shiraz. Right. The 51, the 52, the 63, the 99 and the 2000. Right. All others contain a little bit of Cabernet. Right. It's usually of the order 2, 3, 4, 5%. Right. But it has hit the highest ever, in the 1993 vintage, we hit 14%. Wow. 1% higher, and we would have had to have called it a Grange Shiraz Cabernet, and Max Schubert would have risen from the dead. And So we don't say though in a given year we're going to make a Grange with 6%. It's what comes out in the wash After the sample bottles and the codes are revealed to us, then we find out what was included.
Right.
It's done purely on a quality basis.
Amazing. So do you have a big team then? Because I mean, that's a huge
Yeah.
process. I mean, how
It
many
is.
people are tasting?
Well, you know, I'm very lucky. I have a gentleman called Steve Leanett, my senior red winemaker. I can be here in Dublin today because Steve's, you know, holding fort there. Yeah, I'm there during harvest, during vintage. You know, January through to May is a no-fly zone. Winery, 6-7 days a week.
Wow.
But Steve's been with Penfolds now for well over 30 years. I think 33 vintages.
Okay.
Andrew Baldwin, red winemaker, 24 vintages.
Okay. Yes.
John Bird, who used to work with Max Schubert,
Right.
comes in every vintage. He's semi-retired. 52 vintages with
Wow.
Penfolds.
What a
I say to
heritage.
John, I
What a
say, John,
heritage.
don't tell too
My
many
goodness,
people. I
the
think it's
heritage.
illegal.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So we have this
Yeah.
mentorship, this
Yeah.
continuity,
Wow.
and it's a wonderful thing. Same in our white winemakers. You
Right.
know, there's a lovely culture,
Right.
and it's real.
Right. Yeah.
You know, we can get about spin, we can get it's real.
It's
At
real.
Penfolds, things
No,
are real.
Absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, great. And tell me, will we ever see Penfolds Grange with a screw cap?
There are no markets anywhere with a screw cap for
Right.
Grange. Obviously, we trial, we experiment, but nothing released to date. We have Grange under screw cap, under all sorts of closures on a trial basis.
Right.
But no, looks like Cork's pretty good, and
Right.
TCA rates have fallen around the world back down to, they say,
Absolutely.
about 1%.
No, absolutely. If
Yeah.
you're buying good cork,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. And then the final question. You can't tell me the quantity of Grange because I think that's one.
Oh, well,
that's
no, I
the
can
key to
give like
suggest.
an average release
Right.
is, we say, of the order of between about 7,000 and 9,000 cases.
It's very
Now,
small.
they're 12 bottle
It's very
cases,
small.
9 litre
Yeah,
equivalents.
it's very, very small.
Well, less than half of that of a first growth
absolutely.
for a
No,
global
No,
audience.
it's a tiny
Yeah,
production.
yeah.
In terms of the whole etiquette then of serving Grange,
Yes,
obviously they need to be respected deeply.
indeed.
How would you recommend that we actually enjoy the wine?
Right.
In terms of decanting. and
Well,
things like
again,
that?
it all depends on the age of the wine and the vintage. But the young ones or the old ones, we recommend a double decant from the bottle into a decanter.
Right,
We then wash the bottle and rinse it,
right,
let it drain,
right.
and then from the decanter through a funnel back into the bottle. So 2 decants, bottle to decanter, decanter back into the
Right.
bottle, a double
And
decant.
then would there be a minimum time that we suggest for a younger vintage or not really?
It's just too
Personal
dangerous
taste.
and too
Yeah,
dangerous.
yeah.
The older ones I decant at the table.
Very fragile.
Yeah, very fragile. But some of the older ones will last 4, 5, 6 hours, but you never quite know.
Right.
And it depends on the provenance of the wine, how well they've been cellared. So don't take the risks. Even the younger wines, you know, you can work it in the glass after the double.
Enjoy it
Yeah.
development over a period of time.
Yeah,
I share
or push the glass to one side
Right.
and look at another wine whilst you're waiting for it to open up.
Perfect, great.
Yeah.
Listen, thank you so much for sharing your
Yeah,
your
no, my
knowledge and
pleasure.
experience. So what a wonderful wine. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
well, thank you. It's been
Thank you.
great.